Welcome, dear listeners, to another transformative episode of Inner Peace, Better Health, where we explore the intricate balance of mental well being and physical health in our ever evolving lives. I'm your host, Eric, and today's episode promises to be a heartful journey into the realm of relationships, healing, and personal growth. Joining me are two extraordinary guests, Dr. Dean Sunseri and Holly Kim Sunseri, a dynamic duo whose own incredible story has inspired thousands to reclaim their lives and relationships. With decades of experience as counselors, coaches, and co authors of a powerful book, A Roadmap to the Soul, a practical guide to love, compassion, and inner peace. Dr. Dean and Holly Kim are here to share their expertise on reviving relationships and accelerating recovery and rebuilding broken connections. Whether you are seeking to mend a marriage, heal emotional wounds, or deepen your love and compassion, this conversation will leave you with practical tools and profound inspiration. So let's just dive right in. So, Dr. Dean and Holly Kim, your story is nothing short of remarkable. From vastly different beginnings, the priest and the recovering addict, to building a thriving partnership. What was the moment you realized your journey was meant to intersect? Both of your journeys were meant to intersect.
Yeah, well, even though we both came from very different places, we
Yeah.
happened to be on the same journey. So I was coming out of the seminary. She was, as we say, we're coming out of the streets. But we both
Yeah.
had a certain brokenness in our lives that we were trying to come to terms with. And we're very committed to embrace a healing journey. And I think that's so important is that we all experience brokenness, but
Yeah.
not all of us become very dedicated to doing whatever we need to do to experience healing in our life. So that was the point then we met each other was we were both on this healing journey
Yeah.
and that's how we knew we were meant to be together because we were basically on the same path even though we got to the path very differently.
Wow. That's amazing. So, how do you, given your unique backgrounds, how did you navigate the initial challenges of blending your perspectives on faith, healing, and growth?
Well, what it was that we just started to communicate about the wounds of our lives and the journey that we were on. And
Yeah.
as we continued to communicate about that, we saw that, we had the same goal. So even though he had done different ways and many different things, and so had I on the journey of healing, we were able to incorporate that and learn from one another and then take that and to continue to grow and
Yeah.
realize that there's lots of ways to, love yourself when you haven't been so loving to yourself. So it's like really learning, for me, it's really learning how to love yourself and be kind to yourself, which then, of course, goes out into the world of being kind and loving towards others.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So that's so fascinating. It really highlights how shared values can unite even the most seemingly contrasting paths. Wow. And relationships often falter under the weight of unresolved emotional wounds. What are the first signs that a relationship is struggling due to unhealed trauma, and how can couples start addressing these issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've done marriage counseling for years and years and part of our book that we wrote was to help people overcome the same cycles. How do you
Yeah.
know you're stuck in emotional wounds? Is that you have the same argument over and over and over and over again. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It changes a little bit. So whenever you cycling through the same argument, the issue
Yeah.
is deeper than what's happening in the present. And that's where it's important to we say put the pieces together, the puzzle pieces of the puzzle together because when
Mm-hmm.
I have a wound that has not been given the proper attention and had a chance to heal, those are the ones that tend to be replayed over and over again. And so it needs
Yeah.
to be given attention. And I need to be able to put together the pieces. For example, if I had a bad experience with a mother that abandoned me for whatever reason, and
Yeah.
continually fight with my wife because she doesn't pay enough attention to me. I always perceive her as abandoning me. Well, It may not be about my wife. It may be about this wound that I haven't resolved about my mother. And so if I can give that the proper attention that it deserves, then I can begin to separate what is about my wife and what is about my history. When I can do that proper separation and make those connections, then those are the times that I can break free, and we can break free from the cyclical fighting that we go over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. How do you suggest partners maintain patience and empathy during the this often painful healing process?
So repeat that again.
I'm sorry. How do you
Say,
suggest partners maintain patience and empathy during this often painful healing process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. One of the things is that we have our clients do their work in front of each other if they come in as couples. S-
Mhm.
So, what we're having them do is really share the part of them that has been wounded from life, and then the part of them that has tried to protect them from ever getting hurt again. And so, by someone owning their own stuff in front of another human being, the other person, the spouse, can really see how those two things are connected and start to see that it's not so much about that person, but about where they came from. And when a person starts to own their own things, all of a sudden there is empathy and compassion because it's like, wow, that's why you're, so distant because, as using the example that Dean brought, is that your mother was never available, even though she was always in the house. And so you
Yeah.
start to have compassion for that person. And then that person starts to see, you know what, this is not really about you. You're the one that's triggering this. And the thing that I always say about triggers is that triggers are an opportunity to learn to love myself. That it's my stuff that's getting triggered, that's being brought to the surface, that I now am having an opportunity to love myself and become more healed through that trauma.
Uh, wow. Now that's profound insight. Addressing the root cause instead of just the symptoms and the triggers, just like you mentioned, it really makes one rethink the way we approach conflict resolution. Wow. So one of the toughest journeys is rebuilding a marriage after trust has been broken. What's your advice for couples trying to restore trust and reignite love?
yes, in order to rebuild a relationship, you have to practice two principles. Both partners have to practice these two principles. And if they do, they
Mm,
can reconcile anything. The first principle is a spiritual principle, repentance. And repentance is to have a heartfelt sorrow for the things that I have done that have hurt you. So if
yeah.
I've broken the trust of my spouse, I need to have a heartfelt sorrow for that. I need to look her in the eyes and verbalize that, exactly what I've done, and then to make a commitment to learn to do it differently. The
Mm,
other principle is forgiveness. And
yeah.
forgiveness is to recognize that I'm carrying hurt in my heart from the things that you have done. And I'm willing to lay that down on the altar and ask God to remove those hurts. And
Mm,
so, if we can practice these two simple principles, then we can reconcile anything. If we don't practice those
mm,
two principles, then we will stay stuck and we won't get movement. So, it's really a combination of letting go of the hurts and taking responsibility for my behavior, for my reaction, and looking my partner in the eye and say, it was wrong and I'm sorry. And I'm going to learn to do it differently. When there's true humility in practicing those two principles, you can break through and work through and regain trust and reconciliation. Now, I've seen this over and over again. It's not just the words though, it's the action. It needs to be put into action. It needs to be practiced. But couples, I've had couples who have practiced these principles and have had the most extraordinary deep hurts and have been able to reconcile and to reestablish a marriage that was stronger than it was before the hurts began.
wow. That's really wonderful. That's really wonderful. So, are there any practical exercises or rituals per se you recommend to rekindle connection and rebuild intimacy?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple exercises. One, always advocate. We're so busy in our lives right now, and so I would say in the evenings you have to have a check-in time. And every evening at the same time, you do a check in. And what that means is I will share three significant events that day that impacted me and how I felt about it. So I got I had a sale on this job and I felt really excited. I had a disagreement with my child and it was really hurtful. I would share three experiences and how I felt about it, and my spouse would do the same. They would check
Yeah.
in. And then after that, if there was anything that I needed to discuss that was bothersome to me about the other person's behavior, it would be at that time I would discuss it. So it may be, no, I don't have anything, or yes, I was really hurt that I called you twice and you didn't call me back, and we would talk about it. So you need to be very proactive about dealing with the small things so that they don't build up and become big things. And if you have that daily ritual of checking in every evening, say at 7 p.m., then it's like preventive medicine. It'll help keep the relationship healthy.
Yeah. Wow, that's really wonderful. Wow, I love that. It's so empowering to think of love as something we can actively nurture rather than passively expect to flourish. Yeah, one thing that I heard from one of my mentors, it was very interesting. He told me I was I was just seeking some counseling on my relationship, and he told me, Eric, who you marry or who you are in a relationship with is just a raw product. However, what they become in the journey, eh, that's what it's all about. So
Yeah.
I believe when I mean I don't know much about it because I'm still a young lad, but I believe that who you are with and who you marry in a relationship or who you are married to, that person is just a raw product of someone who is being transformed, who is being renewed, who is on that journey of just becoming that person that person aspires to be. So what's your take on that?
I love that. I think that is great view of being able to see, instead of the person that you're in a relationship with, married to, is that they're already have arrived. Because do we ever get to be arrived? I don't know, but we can be loved through the journey, which starts to take the crust off, as you would say, or the the rawness of it all, where the diamond can shine. And a lot of times, until something has been loved, you don't realize what needs to come off. But as we are, like, everybody wants to be loved unconditionally, right? But what that really, a lot of people think that means that you love me in unacceptable behavior. No. Unconditional love means you love me in the wounds that I come from. You love me in the way that I have unfortunately chosen to not love myself, and that you can have compassion for me and love me there. Not that you say it's okay, but that you have compassion and you're actively listening and loving me through in that and saying, I'm really sorry. So through that process of that happening, that rough diamond becomes more shiny, more beautiful, and more clear of where it's supposed to go. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And if we're both on that journey and we're both loving one another through our lives, then all of a sudden we both shine together. So then the light is very bright.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Dean and Holly Kim. Thank you for sharing your wisdom on relationships, and thank you so much for your vulnerability and actionable insights with us today. So, your story and expertise are a beacon of hope for so many navigating the complexities of relationship and personal healing. And to all our listeners, if this conversation has sparked something in you, don't let it fade. Take action today. Head over to www.ihaveavoice.com to explore Dr. Dean and Hollycam's incredible resources, including their book, A Roadmap to the Soul, coaching programs, and seminars. Remember, the journey to inner peace and better health isn't about perfection, it's about persistence, connection, and compassion. Let this be the day you choose to heal, grow, love, and love more deeply. Until next time, this is Arick signing off. Stay well, stay inspired, and remember to nurture your inner peace for a healthier, happier life.